It started with a sound. A muffled laugh. A soft thud. A rhythm. Subtle. Repeating. At first, I thought it was the TV. Maybe Melissa fell asleep with it on again. Maybe it was one of those late-night crime shows she liked. The kind with too much bass, too much drama. But when I pressed my ear against the bedroom wall, the one that shared space with the apartment next door, I didn't hear gunshots or dialogue. I heard breathing. Heavy. Intimate. Raw. My throat tightened. I told myself it wasn't her. Couldn't be her. She was in the shower when I got home an hour ago. Said she was tired. Said she had a headache. Kissed me on the cheek and pulled away when I tried for more. Now I was lying in our bed, fully clothed, heart pounding in my chest while the sounds from the wall got clearer. Faster. Deeper. That wall. The one we shared with apartment 3B. With Jake. Our neighbor. Our friend. My drinking buddy on Sundays. The guy who helped me fix our leaky faucet 2 months ago. The guy who laughed at my lame jokes and gave Melissa a hug every time we had him over for dinner. I sat up in bed, the sheets suddenly cold. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to believe it. But something inside me already knew. I stood. Walked barefoot across the hardwood floor, every step a stab of dread. I opened our bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. The bathroom door was wide open. Lights off. No steam. No Melissa. The apartment was silent. Except for that wall. I moved to it again, this time pressing my palm flat against it. My head tilted like I needed more proof. But there was no doubt. The bed on the other side was creaking now. Rhythmic. Familiar. Inescapable. My knees buckled slightly. I gripped the frame of the door to stay upright. I wanted to scream. To pound on the wall. To barge in. But I didn't. I just stood there like a ghost in my own home, listening to my world collapse one moan at a time. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, alone on the couch, staring at nothing. When Melissa came back at 3:42 a.m., hair wet, wearing a hoodie that wasn't hers, I didn't say a word. She didn't either. She just walked past me. Straight to the bedroom. Door closed. Click. Locked. I heard her cry through the door, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the sound. The sound through the wall. And everything inside me went cold. The next morning she acted like nothing happened. She walked into the kitchen wearing one of my old t-shirts, humming a song under her breath like she hadn't shattered something sacred just hours earlier. Her hair was damp again, freshly showered, carefully styled, and she smelled like the lavender shampoo I bought her last Christmas. The same one she once said made her feel safe. I watched her move around the kitchen, pouring coffee, adding almond milk, 2 sugars. The exact way I like it. She handed me the mug without looking me in the eye. Rough night, she asked softly like it was some shared joke. I took the mug and set it down on the counter, untouched. Where were you? She paused just for a second. Just long enough for the mask to slip. I went for a drive, she said, not even blinking. Cleared my head. I couldn't sleep. A drive, I repeated. My voice sounded foreign to me, hollow, flat. Yeah, she said, finally meeting my eyes. Her gaze was tired but steady. Why? I didn't answer. I didn't mention the sound. I didn't ask about the locked door. I didn't even bring up the hoodie, the black one with the faded college logo, the one that clearly wasn't mine. It had a scent too. Something earthy. Musky. Male. Jake. Instead, I just stared at her as if looking hard enough might make her confess. Might make her crumble under the weight of her own lie. But Melissa was good. Too good. She held that silence like a shield, sipping her own coffee with a calm that made me feel insane. I spent the rest of the day trying to function, checking emails, pretending to work, answering calls I barely understood. But my mind wasn't in any of it. It was stuck on that wall. On what I'd heard. On the way her body moved when she thought no one was watching. I started noticing things. Her phone never left her hand now. She typed with the screen angled away from me. She smiled at texts she wouldn't let me see. She spent more time running errands than she ever did before. And every time I walked by apartment 3B, I felt this sick twist in my gut, like the air itself was infected with something foul. Something rotten. And Jake? He stopped coming by. No more beers. No more random check-ins. No more helping with tools or trading weekend plans. He avoided me like I was contagious. Like guilt had made him allergic to my face. The worst part was I still wanted to believe I was wrong. That it was all in my head. That maybe I was the one losing it. That maybe the sound I heard, the creaks, the breath, the pleasure, was a dream. A twisted echo of paranoia and late-night imagination. But deep down I knew. You don't imagine betrayal. You feel it. Like a knife under the ribs, twisting with every smile, every lie, every time she said, "I love you," without flinching. And I was bleeding. Quietly. Constantly. Just waiting for it all to boil over. A week passed. 7 days of tight smiles, cold dinners, and even colder silences. We existed under the same roof like strangers, barely touching, barely speaking. Melissa had perfected the art of avoidance. She left early, came home late, always had some excuse ready before I could ask. Work meetings. Gym classes. Errands. A friend in crisis. Her life was suddenly full of obligations that didn't include me. And Jake? His door stayed closed. Curtains drawn. Lights off even when his car was parked outside. I didn't see him once, not even in the hallway. But I felt him. Every time I passed his apartment, I could feel the weight of it, the lies pressed into the drywall, the memory of that night echoing behind my eyes. One evening, something inside me snapped. Melissa said she was going to the store. Said she needed wine and chocolate for a girls' movie night. I nodded. Watched her grab her purse and keys, blow me a kiss she didn't mean. I waited exactly 5 minutes after the door closed before I stepped into the hallway. I walked straight to 3B. My fist hovered in the air for a second, a long, shaky second, before I knocked. Firm. 3 times. Silence. Then a shuffle. The sound of hesitation. Then the door opened. Jake stood there, shirtless, barefoot, hair messy like he'd just rolled out of bed. His eyes went wide when he saw me. Not surprised, panicked. Like a man who'd been caught mid-crime and didn't know how to hide the evidence. "Hey, man," he said, voice strained. "What's up?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. Really looked. At the scratch on his neck. At the faint purple bruise on his collarbone. At the unmistakable mark of a woman's presence clinging to him like smoke. I took a step forward. He stepped back instinctively. "Where is she?" I asked quietly. His jaw clenched. "Who?" I laughed. A dry, bitter sound that felt like it didn't even belong to me. "Melissa." Jake's face went pale. I don't know, man. Isn't she at home? You tell me." The silence between us was thick, suffocating. His eyes darted toward the hallway, then back to me. And that's when I saw it. The hoodie. The same black hoodie she wore that night. Hanging off the back of his kitchen chair. Every part of me screamed to lash out, to throw a punch, to break something, to make him feel a fraction of what I was drowning in. But instead I just nodded. Slow. Cold. "I thought we were friends," I said. Jake looked away, ashamed, but not enough. "I didn't mean for," he started, but I cut him off. "You meant it every time." I turned and walked away. Not because I forgave him. Not because I was done. But because if I stayed, I wouldn't have been able to stop myself. And Melissa? She came home an hour later, carrying wine and chocolate. Her eyes didn't meet mine once that night. But I didn't need her to admit anything. I already knew everything. I waited for her to confess. For days, I walked around our apartment like a ghost, lingering in doorways, sitting quietly beside her on the couch, watching her laugh at sitcoms and scroll through her phone like she wasn't hiding a knife behind her back. I expected the weight of her guilt to eventually crush her. I waited for her eyes to brim with tears, for her lips to tremble, for her voice to crack with a whispered, "I'm sorry." But it never came. Melissa was an actress. A professional. Every touch, every word, every gesture, all carefully measured, all calculated. She still called me babe, still asked how my day was, still slipped into our bed at night and turned her back to me like nothing had changed. But everything had. The space between us wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional, spiritual, fundamental. She was a stranger in the skin of the woman I loved. I thought about confronting her directly. So many times I imagined it. I'd walk into the living room while she sat sipping her wine, turn off the TV, stand in front of her, and say it. I know. Just those 2 words. Simple. Devastating. I imagined her reaction, the way her face would drop, how she'd stammer through excuses or maybe finally break down and tell the truth. I rehearsed it in my head like a script. Over and over. But every time I got close, something stopped me. Cowardice. Hope. Pride. Maybe all 3. Or maybe it was that part of me, the foolish, wounded, pathetic part that didn't want to hear the truth out loud. That still clung to the fantasy that if we never said it, it wouldn't be real. So instead of confrontation, I studied her. I became obsessed with the little details. The changes in her routine. The inflections in her voice. The way she smiled at texts and quickly turned her screen away. I started checking her phone when she was in the shower, scrolling through her apps, looking for something, anything that could explain why she was doing this. Why she was tearing apart the life we'd built together. One night, I found it. A hidden folder in her photo gallery. tucked behind layers of innocent images, sunsets, brunches, selfies with friends. Inside were pictures. Not explicit, but intimate enough. Her in that hoodie, curled up on someone's bed. Her holding a glass of whiskey I knew wasn't from our kitchen. Her wearing a smile I hadn't seen in months, soft, warm, real. And one shot that made my stomach flip. Jake, bare-chested, asleep. Her hand on his chest, fingers curled into his skin. She took it like a keepsake. Like proof. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen, and for a moment I actually felt relief. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just clarity. The fog of doubt, suspicion, and paranoia had finally lifted. This wasn't just in my head. This wasn't a bad dream. It was real. It was happening. And I wasn't crazy. I put the phone down and walked to the balcony. The night air was sharp, but I welcomed it. I stood there in the dark, the city buzzing beneath me, the weight of the truth sitting heavy on my chest. I thought about who I used to be before all this. Before the lies, the silence, the walls between us. I didn't recognize that man anymore. And maybe, neither did she. I stopped trying. Something inside me, something vital, had shut down. Like a circuit blown, a fuse melted by too much heat. I moved through the days with mechanical efficiency. Wake up. Shower. Coffee. Work. Eat. Sleep. Repeat. I answered her when she spoke to me. I even laughed at the right moments. But none of it was real. I wasn't living, I was maintaining. Keeping the house of cards standing just long enough to figure out what came next. Melissa didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. She was too busy floating in whatever fantasy world she had built with Jake. A world where our history didn't matter. Where the promises we made were nothing more than casual phrases thrown into the wind. I watched her get ready one Saturday, a hair curled, makeup perfect, slipping into that black dress I'd always loved on her. She used to wear it for me. Now, she didn't even tell me where she was going. You look nice, I said, not because I meant it, but because I wanted to see her reaction. She turned, caught off guard for a second. Thanks, she said softly, eyes flicking away. Just dinner with the girls. I nodded. Sure. She hesitated, like she knew I didn't believe her. But instead of explaining, she kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door. No apology. No shame. I watched from the balcony as she climbed into a car, not an Uber. Not a cab. Jake's Jeep. It idled for a few seconds before pulling away, and I just stood there, gripping the railing so hard my knuckles went white. The night swallowed them like a secret. One more lie added to the pile. That was the moment I realized something important. Her smile wasn't mine anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. Whatever light used to shine between us had been extinguished quietly, like someone blowing out a candle in the dark. And I'd been too scared to admit it. The woman I loved, the one I proposed to on a rainy night in Brooklyn, the one I danced with barefoot in our kitchen at 2 a.m., the one who once cried into my chest because she couldn't imagine a life without me, that woman was gone. In her place stood a stranger who wore her skin, spoke with her voice, and shared her bed, but not her soul. It hurt. God, it hurt. But it also freed me. For the first time, I let the truth settle in my bones. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't a rough patch. It was betrayal. Deliberate. Repeated. Intimate. And no amount of pretending, hoping, or waiting would ever change that. That night, I didn't wait up for her. I didn't check the time when she came home or listen for the sound of her keys in the lock. I didn't look at her when she slipped into bed beside me or react when she reached for my arm out of habit. I lay still. Eyes open. Heart closed. And for the first time in months, I started thinking about life after her. I didn't make a scene. There was no screaming, no dramatic showdown, no public outburst of anger. I didn't flip tables or rip photos off the walls or confront her with evidence laid out like courtroom exhibits. That's not how it happened. I think some part of me had spent so long living inside the quiet devastation that by the time I decided to leave, I had no rage left, only silence. A heavy, resolute silence that wrapped around me like armor. I started packing on a Wednesday. Slowly. Deliberately. Just the essentials at first, a suitcase of clothes, my laptop, my journals. I left the wedding photos on the shelf. I left the throw blanket we picked out together at that little market in Vermont. I even left my favorite mug, the one she always used when she pretended to care. I didn't want anything that smelled like our old life. It all felt tainted. Hollow. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and chose to pretend otherwise, just like I had for too long. I rented a storage unit on the edge of town. Cheap. Clean. Forgettable. I started moving my boxes there during my lunch breaks, claiming I had work meetings or errands. Nobody asked. Nobody cared. The girl at the front desk handed me the key like I was just another guy running from something, which I guess I was. I remember thinking how easy it was, how utterly mundane it felt to dismantle a life you once swore was everything. Then came the hard part, the goodbye I never said. I wrote her a letter. 3 pages. Honest. Brutal. Full of the things I never had the strength to say out loud. I didn't accuse her. I didn't beg. I just told her the truth about what I heard through the wall, about the hoodie, about the photo on her phone, about how I died a little more every time she lied to my face. I told her I loved her once more deeply than she'd ever understand. But I also told her I couldn't be her fool anymore. I left the letter on the kitchen counter right under the wine opener she always left out. Then I left. I didn't look back. Didn't pause at the doorway or take one last look at the place we used to call home. Because it wasn't home anymore. It was just walls, furniture, and echoes. Ghosts of what used to be. I moved into a small studio on the other side of the city. Nothing fancy, 1 window, a creaky floor, and a bed that barely fit in the corner. But it was mine. Untouched. Clean. The first night, I lay on the mattress with no sheets, no pillows, just a jacket rolled under my head and silence all around me. And for the first time in months, I slept. Not well. Not long. But peacefully. And that somehow was enough. It had been 3 weeks since I left when she finally called. I was standing in line at a grocery store, half listening to the cashier talk to the woman in front of me about avocados when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't recognize the number, it was a new one. Burner, probably. But something in my gut twisted before I even answered. I knew it was her. I stepped outside and pressed the phone to my ear, heart already thudding against my ribs. Hello? I said, voice low, uncertain. There was a pause. A breath. Then, why didn't you tell me you were leaving? Melissa. Her voice cracked on the last word, as if saying it out loud made it more real. I exhaled slowly, watching a gust of wind scatter dead leaves across the pavement. I didn't think I owed you an explanation. You think I don't deserve one? She asked, and now her voice was sharper, defensive. Still playing the victim. No, I said simply. I think you forfeited the right to one. Another pause. She didn't argue. I came home, she finally said, softer now. I saw the letter. I said nothing. It hurt, she added, like that was supposed to move me. You could have at least said goodbye. Like you said goodbye to me every time you walked into his apartment? I replied, not with anger, but with the calm weight of the truth. Silence again. Only this time it stretched. She didn't deny it. Didn't explain. Just breathed on the other end like she was trying not to fall apart. I didn't plan for it to happen, she said eventually. It just did. I closed my eyes, the words so familiar it made me nauseous. It just happened. The classic excuse. The fallback line of cowards. I loved you, I said. Not shouting. Not begging. Just stating it like a fact. And you buried that love under lies. I still love you, she whispered, and I could hear the tears now. But it was too late. Because love isn't just about feeling. It's about choice. And she had made hers. Over and over. Behind my back. Through my wall. I don't believe you, I said gently, and it was the most honest thing I'd said to her in months. She tried to speak again, but I hung up before she could. Not out of cruelty. Not out of spite. But because I knew that if I let her talk, she'd drag me back into her storm, and I had just started to find my way out. I stood there for a moment, the phone still in my hand, the sun starting to dip behind the buildings. I felt lighter. Not happy. Not healed. But lighter. Like I just closed the last chapter of a book I never wanted to read in the first place. And for the first time since that sound through the wall, I knew I wasn't going back. Not ever. Life didn't immediately get better. That's the thing people don't talk about after betrayal. The absence doesn't fill with peace right away. It fills with noise. Memories. Doubts. Phantom pains. I'd walk into my new apartment and expect to hear her singing in the kitchen. I'd roll over in bed and instinctively reach for a body that wasn't there. My heart would jump at shadows, flinch at the buzz of a phone, react to every sound with the panic of someone who's lived too long on the edge of discovery. But slowly, the echoes started to fade. I filled the space with things that were mine, really mine. A cheap wooden desk where I started journaling again. A record player I found at a thrift store, playing albums I hadn't listened to since college. I cooked for one and left dishes in the sink and nobody cared. I came home late, walked barefoot on cold floors and sat in silence without the weight of deception breathing down my neck. It wasn't much, but it was honest. Sometimes I'd see Jake in my dreams. Always in that apartment, always opening the door with that same startled guilt on his face. Sometimes Melissa was there too, her eyes pleading, her mouth moving without sound. But when I woke up, I wasn't shaking anymore. I didn't reach for the phone. I didn't replay the old conversations in my head looking for the moment things cracked. Because I knew now it wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 little fractures. Tiny betrayals. Looks held too long. Texts deleted. Smiles she gave him that used to be mine. The betrayal wasn't just what they did, it was what she withheld, her honesty, her loyalty, her presence. One evening, I ran into an old friend, Rob, a guy I hadn't seen since the early days of our marriage. We grabbed drinks, talked about work, life, sports. When I mentioned the split, he gave me that look, half sympathy, half curiosity. Damn, he said. You guys seemed solid. We weren't, I replied, and it felt strange how easily the words came out. I thought we were, but I think I was the only one trying. He nodded slowly, and we didn't talk about it after that. He didn't press for details. And I was grateful. Because I didn't want pity. I didn't want validation. I just wanted space to breathe. To be. To learn how to exist again without constantly looking over my shoulder. And maybe that's the hardest part of healing, realizing that moving on isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering who you were before the wreckage. And rebuilding from there. I met someone. Not in the way you might think. It wasn't a grand romantic moment, no sparks flying across the room, no love at first sight. It was quieter than that, subtle, careful, like a wounded animal peeking out from the shadows to sniff the air. Her name was Claire. I saw her at a cafe I started going to on weekends just to get out of the apartment. She worked there. Always had her hair tied up, a little smudge of flour on her cheek, and the soft way of laughing that made people feel safe. I wasn't looking for anything. Honestly, I didn't even want anything. I was still too raw, too guarded. But something about the way she spoke to people with real presence, not just politeness, made me stop and notice. The first time she asked me how my day was, I gave her some generic, mumbled answer. She smiled anyway, like she understood more than I was saying. It took weeks before I learned her name. Even longer before I told her mine. We didn't flirt. We talked. About books. About music. About how strange it is to be lonely in a city full of people. And I never told her about Melissa. Not at first. Because I wasn't ready for my past to bleed into this gentle thing that hadn't even begun yet. But eventually, on a rainy afternoon when the cafe was nearly empty, she asked me what I was writing in my journal, and without thinking, I told her. Everything. It poured out of me like water from a broken dam. The sounds through the wall. The hoodie. The silence. The moment I left. I told her how I still woke up some nights expecting to hear keys in the lock or the creak of the bed under someone else's weight. I told her how ashamed I felt, not because I'd been cheated on, but because I'd stayed so long after I knew. Claire didn't pity me. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just listened, her eyes never leaving mine. And when I was done, she placed a quiet hand over mine and said, "That must have been so heavy to carry alone." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to me in months. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Not all at once. Not with fireworks. But like the first crack of sunlight after a storm. I didn't fall in love that day. I didn't rush into anything. I just breathed, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was drowning in my own history. I don't know what Claire will be to me. A friend. A chapter. Maybe something more someday. But what matters is this. She met me where I was broken, tired, honest. And she didn't flinch. It's been 6 months since I walked out of that apartment. 6 months since I left the echo of betrayal behind, since I chose my dignity over denial, silence over shouting, peace over pretending. I wish I could say I'm fully healed, that I've rebuilt everything, that the scars are gone, but that would be a lie. Healing doesn't move in straight lines. Some days I feel strong, untouchable. Other days I hear a laugh that sounds like hers, or I pass someone wearing that same black hoodie, and it all comes rushing back. But it doesn't drown me anymore. It just passes through. Melissa texted me once more. Just once. A simple message, "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're okay." I didn't reply. Not because I hate her, I don't. Not because I want revenge, I don't. But because some doors, once closed, need to stay that way. Answering her would have been like stepping back into the fire after finally crawling out. And I'd burned enough. I heard that she and Jake didn't last. A friend of a friend mentioned it offhandedly like it was a weather report. Apparently, it fizzled out within weeks after I left. No drama. No explosion. Just distance. Emptiness. Maybe they were never in love to begin with, maybe it was just the thrill of secrecy, the escape from their own disappointments. Or maybe it was karma. I didn't care. That part of the story no longer belonged to me. As for me, I started writing again. Not just journals, but stories. Honest ones. Ugly ones. Human ones. About grief and resilience, about betrayal and rebirth. I found meaning in the wreckage, and in a strange way it made me feel whole again. Like I had bled out just enough to make space for something new. Claire and I still see each other. We're not rushing anything. No labels, no declarations. Just two people learning how to be open again. Sometimes we talk for hours, sometimes we sit in silence and both feel just as safe. She never asks me to forget what happened. She just reminds me gently, consistently, that I am more than the worst thing that happened to me. And I am. I used to think betrayal would destroy me. That finding out the person I loved had chosen someone else, and not even with love, but with lust, laziness, proximity, would crush me into dust. But I was wrong. It didn't destroy me. It revealed me. It burned away everything false and left me with something I hadn't felt in years, truth. So this is where I leave that part of my story. Not with bitterness. Not with rage. But with clarity. She betrayed me, yes. She broke me. But in breaking me, she freed me too. And now I finally know what it means to start over. For real this time.